It's a break. But now you're going to check out for 2 weeks. People will come back after that, or sometimes they just won't. You won't even recognize each other. You're like, wait, are you in this class? Like, 2 weeks is a really long, that's half a month. The people are just gonna, I'll figure out school when I get back. It's like, okay, I guess. That might be, it looks like somebody. Anyway. Really? I thought that was the good one. Alright. Who can say? Let's see. Enzo's here. Trey is not. Neither. Josh. Wait. Koontz?
Grimsley.
Damn. But you normally sit over there, right?
Yeah, that's the other one.
Damn. Alright. 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 It's too many Josh. Daniel's here. Sar's here. Alright. Crossed out Harmony. Sorry, Harmony. Alright. Harmony's here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sweet. All right, let's get right into it. Today is a paper day. The way I like to handle those, make sure that's recording, yes, is I keep things pretty low key, low stakes. Some of you are gonna turn in your papers tonight type of thing, like given the conversations we had before class. So, you know, I don't feel like it's fair or realistic to ask a lot of you in class on a day like today. That said, we can't just not do anything. And I feel like paper days are always a really good opportunity to have a real low impact activity that somehow starts the conversation about the next paper. That's what we're gonna do right now. We're gonna watch the rest of this documentary. The documentary we've been watching throughout the semester, by the way, I wanna say is over 2.5 hours long, something like that. And look, I love this stuff, in case that's not clear. Yeah, it's about 2.5 hours long. 2.5 hours is too much. It's too much. I love this and it's too much. But we've broken it into thirds, basically, and eras as well. So, you turning in your papers is the end of the second unit. That is 1988, Die Hard. That's the end of the 80s in this class, okay? Somebody at the door, it's freaking me out. The next movie we're gonna watch, I even brought in ancient technology. I brought in a DVD. By the way, I may have mentioned this before, I worked at Blockbuster. This is in a special paper case. They used to only do these for like when they wanted it to feel special. A paper case. This is flammable. Anyway, you gotta have that watch for next time. That is also 2.5 hours long. You could also argue maybe it's a little bit too long, but I think it's a more fun 2.5 hours.
Do we have to argue that paper?
What's up?
Do we have to argue on that paper?
Kind of. It's a different assignment. The prompts on course did, but this one won't be nearly as. You'll see. Don't get it. Finish this paper first. Anyway, I say all that to say, The Matrix came out in 1999. We were moving into that era, and I really like the fact that it came out in 1999 because it kind of lets us cheat, like we did with Die Hard a little bit. We're in the 90s, but 1999 is basically the year 2000, right? Like we're kind of, it's a nice little hinge point into what 90s movies were. Has anybody sat down and watched The Matrix yet for next time? Like for next, you watch it like over the weekend or something? Did anybody watch it till the credits when those kicked in? That is the most 90s to me part of the movie. Is the Rage Against the Machine guy going, come on! Oh my God. So cheesy. You'll see. But it's how the credits, it's just like, that's a great impersonation. You go, come on! It's like, okay, good job, buddy. But there's some really 90s elements, but what you kind of alluded to, you can keep that to yourself a little more. There are other elements that feel a little more 2000s, feel a little more, a bit Avengers-esque in kind of how those movies are built, right? So I like it for that, a couple others, but I like the way that it encapsulates the 90s and it also looks forward to really the movies you guys probably grew up with, at least in this genre. And we'll talk about that next time. But to do that, I wanted to finish the documentary. This section starts off with a movie near and dear to my childhood heart. What's up?
There's a lot of people do it.
So the very first movie they're going to talk about came out in 1994. You weren't alive. I was 8. It's called Street Fighter. It's based on a video game. If anyone's ever played those games, they're all pretty much the same. But especially if you played Street Fighter 2, which is weirdly what this one is based on, there's not a lot of story. There's basically no story. I mean, there is, but it's all an excuse to, like, why are these people kicking each other in the face? Like, that's the premise of the story in those games. So they decided they were going to make a movie out of that. It's an interesting decision. Anyway, that's where we're going to start. So we're going to start in the early 90s. We're going to move through the Matrix. We're actually going to talk about that for a second and go into the 2000s. And maybe. But it's if you have a spare weekend, check out JCVD. It's legitimate. All right. Like, for instance, he plays himself. I don't know if you know this. I mentioned this actually at the top of class. He's not from here. He's from Belgium. Would you happen to know what language they speak predominantly in Belgium? French. The movie is in French. Because that's what he speaks. That's why he sounds funny when he speaks English. It's not his first language. So it's subtitled. You got to read it. I feel like I should warn you. Really good movie. If I had time, I would watch it right now. It's fucking good. Anyway. Anything you guys noticed? Struck your eye? Found kind of interesting? I'm going to sign out of Amazon while I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
You said yes?
Yeah. So like something I found interesting is when
Sure.
they were like, they said in the 90s was when they like stopped hiring like primarily martial artists or
Yeah, no more bodybuilders, no more martial artists, he
and
says.
they were like, we're gonna get actual actors
And just teach them to do the...
teach them or get stunt doubles.
Yeah. Well, they teach them and train them when necessary, but then for the really crazy stuff, we use doubles. Why do you think they decided to do that? What's the motivation to do that? Because they kind of get into it, but I don't know if anybody said it outright. Why use actors instead of bodybuilders and martial artists?
Because people got kind of tired of the same guys.
That's one. That one guy is another great quotation. He says,
Oh, yeah, I have it right here.
yeah, we got tired of the testosterone, massive chest, period. He said we got tired of it. That's an interesting way to put it. Like a lot, I don't know if you picked up on this, and I've watched this several times, so you may not have. Different guys in the documentary have served different roles, like in their careers, right? And that one guy, whenever he shows up, who has that quotation, is him and the D'Souza guy are very focused on like the financial aspects and how audiences are going to receive this stuff. Which again, to their credit, that would make you successful, like as a director, right? If I'm thinking, well, how's an audience gonna? That will probably make you a successful director. But then the question is, what kind of movies do you make? What motivates, like your story arc, you know? And is it just like he's kind of talking about it like it's a trend? Like we just got tired, we got burnt out on big dudes in the 80s. Kind of like, I guess he would argue, they got burnt out on really bummer movies in the 70s. Yeah.
I was about to say, like, you can kind of think of it as a trend, though, because
Yeah.
in the 70s with Rocky, that was, like, kind of no offense to Rocky, kind of like a loser's tale.
Yeah.
Kind of,
No, I promise you.
Like, bodybuilders.
Yeah.
In the 90s were really smart dudes or whatever.
Usually
Just
smaller,
like dudes,
but
yeah, smaller.
yeah.
I don't know what the 2000s and the 2010s have, but...
Or yeah, we might get there in a different way, but not for this paper. But yeah, that's pretty succinctly put. And I guess part of the 90s, you describe it as like smaller guys, smarter, is they stop using the bodybuilders and martial artists, they start using nerdy actors who went to like acting school and stuff. So they gotta be smaller, they gotta be a little smarter, just because that's what they look like, right? Sure. Again, that's a weird way to talk about making movies though. Because in an ideal world, for me anyway, it would be one or two people have like a really cool idea. They sit down and write it, and they work on it, and maybe they show it to some people, and they work on it some more. It's just this piece of art, right, that they made. And hopefully people like it, but if they don't, fuck them, because we, you know, like that. And that's the case with a lot of people. I'm not telling you that never happens, but it's interesting, especially when you get to the 90s. Like D'Souza, I said that the guy, I think he's in a red shirt, he's got a stupid hat, some glasses. He's the guy that made Street Fighter, which, by the way, I told you before, I was 8 when it came out. I was very hyped for that movie.
It sucked.
As an 8-year-old, I promise you, I remember this. It may have been the first time I was actually disappointed. I'm watching it because no one would take us, because I was 8, I have to be taking places. No one would take us to see it. When it came out, my cousin got it, I think for Christmas, on VHS, right? I'm at his house, we're watching it. About halfway through, I didn't have the language for this yet, but the thought was, this is a piece of shit. And I'm 8. Such a low bar for an 8-year-old. I was like, this is terrible. And it is, it's really bad. But you hear how he made the movie. He said they had 3 days to write it. He said the only reason they chose it is because when he pitched it to him, that's exactly what they wanted to do anyway. At no point were they like, well, does this character arc make sense? Are we invested in what these people are doing? No. It was like, this guy needs missiles. And he says he didn't want to do a tournament movie. Does anybody, I think several of you said you played Street Fighter. How would you describe the setup of the combatants? They're probably involved in a what?
Like an international tournament.
A fucking tournament.
There's like demons in it and like.
Sure, but it's a fucking tournament.
Martial arts and like.
The guy says his starting position for writing the film was, I don't want to do another tournament movie because I just did one. And it's like, bro, that's what it is. That is the only thing we know, that they're in a tournament. And he's like, nah. Right? That's bananas. That's a crazy way. I'm trying to think, like, that'd be like if I made spy movies and then somebody approached me with James Bond and I'm like, I don't want to make another spy movie. I'm going to do something else with it. It's like, no, that is what it is, though. You can't just, I'm tired of it, right? It's wild the way some of these guys make movies. Okay, cool. Other things you guys notice? Let's see. He mentioned the trouble, speaking of Street Fighter, he mentioned the trouble. Oh, is your hand up, sir?
Yeah.
You go ahead.
I was like the death of the hero.
The what now?
The death of the hero, I think you said.
Where at? Or what do you mean?
I don't remember. The story said the death of the hero. And I was like,
Do you remember what context they said it in?
I believe it's when they started talking about speed.
I know the big blonde dude talks about like the death of the star. He feels like there's no big movie stars like Schwarzenegger was one, Stallone was one. And I know you guys are like, no, but we have them, and we do. But I do wonder if, I mean, I was barely alive back then. I was a kid. But it does seem like, if you can believe it, certain people who were considered movie stars were way bigger than movie stars are now. And that's interesting, that like also that isn't, is your hand up, Harmony? It's not. You can touch your face, you're allowed. But it's, sorry. It's interesting too, yeah, like why, do you guys get the sense, because this is an honest question I have, do you guys get the sense that studios decided we weren't going to do stars so much anymore, or does it seem like audiences decided?
I would say like a little bit of both.
A little bit of both? Maybe it's a chicken egg type of thing?
Yeah, it's kind of like, we can put this out, see what they like, and I guess a lot of the audience is kind of like, yo, this is really cool. Like, I like him because he's cool. I don't like him.
I do remember both Schwarzenegger and Stallone. I feel like a time traveler coming from the past to tell you guys. I do kind of remember those guys going away. Like, I do remember just not seeing them and stuff much anymore. Which happens to everybody, but they were still in their prime. Like, they could have definitely been in more stuff. The last movie they talked about with Schwarzenegger there, the End of Days, is dark as fuck. Like that, he's fighting the literal devil. I don't know if you saw that. Like, it's apocalypse. It's like, and one idea is they were trying anything. They're like, we need the wildest thing we could think of to get people to see a Schwarzenegger movie. Let's have him fight Satan. All right, cool. It's kind of, it's a leap. Get your hand up. Somebody. I know I didn't make that up. Okay.
I could say something
No pressure. You know, I was interested. Kind of bag on the Sousa guy again. The other reason he made some of the edits he made to the movies because it couldn't be rated R, because you can't sell toys for a rated R movie. And I kind of get that, especially me as an 8-year-old. There's no way I was getting to see a rated R movie, right? Then he talks about what they did. They told, and that's part of the issue, is it's a fight movie, and the fights are awful. But then he says it's G now. They cut so much, so how do they fix it? They add a curse word. Jean-Claude Van Damme came back into the studio to record the S word. Well, now it's PG-13. Now we're cool. But we're not too cool, right? Teenagers will go see it, but kids can come see it too. It's all about selling toys. He wrote it in 3 days to sell toys. Like that's the two takeaways from that section of the documentary. Some movies get made like that. Ugh. Anything else you guys notice? A lot here about Keanu Reeves, which is kind of cool because you guys know who that is. He's John Wick, right? You know I've never seen John Wick. I know. I forget when it came out. I was either a new father or I was in college and had no time or money. But since then, my wife has seen it and she told me, like, she spoiled it. She told me, has everybody seen that movie?
Oh, the most recent one that came out?
The first one.
I haven't seen any of them.
Okay, well, there's a real, somebody dies in the first one. She told me. I was like, why would you do that? She's like, well, I was just telling you about the movie. It's like, you told me what happened. Like, one of the big parts in the film where you're like, damn, dude, I can't, like, she told me that. And now, I mean, I will watch it one day, but now I have no reason to, like, hurry up on it. Sucks. Do what? I mean, it just ruined the damn movie. But anyway, he becomes an action star. Like, he was not that, I was surprised there were no giggles at him and Bill and Ted. He was a goofball. And in Point Break, I don't know if you've seen that movie, he's supposed to be the guy, he's supposed to be the non-action guy. That's his character. He's like, he's a cop, but he can go undercover because he doesn't look like a cop. He looks like a loser. You know, he's pretty thin. He's kind of. All of a sudden, he's in Speed, and then from there, The Matrix, and he's going. He's like the best example of an actor becoming an action star. So I guess it can happen. Even that, like, I guess what I would ask there is, what does it seem like? Because there's different arguments made in this part of the documentary. Especially because it's a bunch of old heads talking about new stuff, and you know how old people feel about new things. But them making the point that they shifted away from action stars to actors, what does it seem like we're privileging now in action movies? It doesn't seem like we're worried as much about the action as much as we are what?
Whoever the main character is.
Yeah, well, but that person's ability to do what on screen, if not action? Act! Yeah. Character stuff, like dialogue or be funny or emote. Part of the knock on Schwarzenegger, especially early in his career, is he didn't speak well. That's going to make it really hard to act. You know what I mean? You don't speak well. So on the one hand, like toward the end of the film, all the old heads are like, we make movies now, but we don't care so much about the characters. And maybe that's true sometimes. They're talking about new action movies. I think that is true sometimes. Some of the Fast and Furious movies, for example, I'm just like, I don't care if they all die. I don't care. But the flip side of that narrative is, if they're putting actors in all these movies, well, these guys are capable. These guys can act. So that would suggest, well, we're more interested in story, right? Like, we're more interested in you caring about the characters and less so the action. I don't know what to do with that, because I feel like I agree with both. Anything else you guys noticed? Took away from it? We never got to talk about this, but Scott Adkins points out that The Matrix does it the Hong Kong way when it comes to action. which is true. I hate that I don't have time to really talk to you about that. I'm also not an expert in it. But one thing you will very quickly realize when you watch The Matrix is the action scenes are way different from the other movies we've watched. They don't feel American in the way that they're made. They shoot the action sequences like a Hong Kong movie. Huh?
No, I was trying to understand what you meant about
You'll see. It's super different. And it's I mean it's really cool, but I'm not sure what to do with that. Like why they do it or what it might mean. I have to think about it. Yeah.
Is it like action like an Old Boy?
You in that movie.
Good fucking movie.
It is. There's not a ton of action in that movie. And I would actually, Old Boy's Korean. I would say Old Boy is made intentionally, even the action bits that are in it are made to not feel so action-y. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, again, I think you and I are thinking of the hammer scene predominantly. Yeah. Part of the reason that scene is so cool is because it feels like if you or I got dropped into that hallway and we had to get out and we had a hammer. That's how we would fight. You know, just like, fuck it. You know, like, no. You saw the making of, like, it's like dudes on wires and like spinning and like not realistic. I know that seems a little silly because like a lot of the stuff in Die Hard is pretty not realistic. Die Hard's gonna feel entirely plausible after you watch The Matrix, like comparatively. But I don't know. You guys will have to watch it first, and maybe we'll be able to talk about the action a little bit. It's super different. You'll see what I mean. A lot of spinning. Okay. Anything else you guys noticed? This is pretty good. The guy claims that the Fast and the Furious movies are the last hope of classic 80s action. And you notice what he cites. He never once mentions characters. He talks about all the like explosions, and he's like a countdown timer, and they show a submarine cutting through the Antarctic or something. I stopped watching the Fast and the Furious movies after the first one, so I couldn't tell you.
Don't do it.
Isn't there like 12 of them?
Don't do it. That's my favorite movies.
I'm just, it feels like too many. 12 feels like too many.
But it's different. You know, it's different.
I don't know. I think they're pretty much always fast and always angry. Like, I don't know.
You kind of have to switch.
Wait, they have missions on it? Isn't it about racing?
The first one was.
The first round for walk out of the bank. That is not racing.
Yeah, it's not very recent.
Yeah, I feel like
It's not racing like 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It's
Well, not-
guns in the car. So
Like literally, I want to say number 2 was Tokyo Racing. And after that,
Tokyo Drift. Yeah.
That was the only one.
Well, no, I mean, all of But even this, like, it's kind of fun. Like, somebody along the way realized, all right, we've made like 3 or 4 of these things, and they're still going to see them, but they're going to get tired of the racing thing. We can't just keep doing that. We got to switch it up. Make them fucking agents or something, right? Like, we got to...
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically, right?
yeah, now they're saving the world from like missiles and stuff.
That's beyond silly. But I mean, there's probably... I'm not telling anyone to write a paper on all the Fast and Furious movies. That would be like a book. But there's almost definitely something to think about. Because Fast and Furious, I think, came out... the first one might have come out when I was in like high school or something. But just the evolution, right? Because the franchise is so old now and it has so many entries, you could probably like really mark sort of the tide of audience expectation. Like, because the first one, I don't know if you know this, is a remake of like a 60s movie or something called The Fast and the Furious. It's a straight up remake. And from there, they were like, well, that did well, let's just make more. Like, it's, you know, the sequelitis that we have right now. All right, last thing, this kind of ties into that, and I'll let you guys go. The Die Hard movies. I showed you the first one because I think it's awesome. And also because I think there's a lot going on, but that's part of why I think it's awesome. But one of the guys points out, I forget how many Die Hard, I think we're up to Die Hard 5 or something. That one guy makes the point, the whole premise of the first one is he's a regular guy in this crazy situation, and he somehow makes it out. Like, that's what makes it so cool. Once you have Die Hard 2, 3, 4, 5, like, it's not unlikely anymore. Shit just keeps happening to this guy. It's sequelitis, and they kind of throw logic out the window. They throw the original premise out the window. Not to hate on Fast and the Furious, but at least in a kind of similar way to how it sounds those movies went, right? You recognize at some point, whatever reason we made this movie initially can't work anymore, so we got to throw some other shit at it, and we just figure it out from there. That's how we make some of these movies now. And I'm not saying it's always bad, but it's troubling. And again, I think it says something about how the people that make these films think about their audience, what we're willing to put up with, or what we even want. I guess that's all I got. You guys have any?
It's like Taken. It's like 4 of those. How do they-
Are there really?
That's exactly what it is.
I think they made 3. Did they make a 4th one?
Or like
It's like 3 or 4.
transporter and stuff like
See, we
that.
got all
Like, how
these
many
movies.
people-
Yeah.
My favorite.
Why do they keep getting stolen?
Yeah. No, well, Taken's a great example. I've seen that one.
Yeah.
I think I may have seen the second one at some point.
Like, how do they
And I
keep
never
getting-
saw the third because I saw the second one and I was like, why does this movie exist?
But it's like that same concept, like he's trying to save his family and then somehow.
But it's so unlikely and so ridiculous.
Like, after the first one, you gotta track them. Like, how many of your daughters you get taken? There's 3 of them.
Well,
All 3 of them get taken or something.
The purist would argue after the first one you don't make anymore, right? You're like, damn, we made a good movie, people liked it, moving on, right? But some of the folks in the documentary would say, well, it did well, let's pump out a few more. Because people will go see it, right? We're talking about motivation. Is it about money or is it about art? Those are 2 different camps. But the more sequels you add, things just tend to get worse.
Just drop off.
You run out of enthusiasm, both as an audience and also as an author, right? Anyway, I mean that just makes me think about the 20,000 Avengers movies, but that's another discussion. All right, for next time, The Matrix. Watch it if you haven't already. It's pretty good. It's wild. That's all I'll say about it. Yeah, and again, we'll start. If you have questions about the movie, thank you for reminding me. Bring them in. We'll open class with that. Okay? You legit might not be sure of everything that happens. We'll talk about it. All right. I'll see you guys Wednesday.